The Baltimore Ravens Hall of Famer gave the Buffalo Bills some bulletin board material, but he wasn't the only former Raven that had some controversial comments. We talk about that, the media narrative surrounding Lamar Jackson leading up to the divisional round, including Mike Florio giving up on him. All that and more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. As always, we're free and available on all podcasting platforms for you, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens on this purple divisional round Friday is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Back in the house, it is Sam Njoku of the Ravens Talk podcast. And Sam, at the end of the show last week, we said hopefully we'll be talking again after a Ravens playoff victory. That certainly happened in one of the most dominating playoff wins I've ever seen the Ravens have, 28-14 over Pittsburgh. And now it's the matchup everybody's been waiting for. It's Ravens-Bills, Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen. And based off of what I've seen you say this week about the matchup, which we'll get into, I think you like this one just a little bit for Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, I told you last week I thought the Ravens would have a good chance against the Steelers, and I think this is an even better matchup for the Ravens, but we'll talk about it. But I'm feeling pretty confident heading into this one.
Yeah, and I think that was the notion a lot of people had. It was almost like Pittsburgh, it's divisional, you don't really know what's going to happen. We talked about that uncertainty, you and I. But Buffalo, especially defensively, there's some interesting trends to watch out for, which I know you've identified and we'll get into. But I first want to start off bulletin board material, Sam. First of all, how much do you read into bulletin board material? Like, does it fire up teams? Do you think it has that big of an impact? Or are you just kind of like, people are going to say what they say, the teams don't really care?
It depends. It depends on the circumstance. If it's really close, I think it's like going to be a 3-point, 2-point, 1-point game, then maybe that bulletin board material gives you that extra edge. But for the most part, it's just a lot of fluff. It's the playoffs. You don't need bulletin board material. If you lose, you go home. That's enough motivation, enough to get it done.
Yeah, well, the former Ravens star, Hall of Famer, Mr. Ed Reed himself, went on the Up and Adams show with Kay Adams and was asked about how he would stop Josh Allen from running, and gave an answer about kind of showing him different looks and making him prove himself. And the big quote that has everybody, especially in Buffalo, up in arms is Ed Reed saying, "We would come at Josh Allen. Josh Allen would have to make throws, show me he can complete the football after getting hit all day, and it's proven that he can't." Obviously, the Buffalo media space quickly got a hold of this quote from Ed Reed, and I think a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Ed Reed messed up. This is bulletin board material for the Bills, and it's game over now," which obviously, again, I'm with you, Sam. I don't think it makes a massive difference one way or the other. But again, I do think Josh has proven that he can complete the football after getting hit all day. Do you agree with Ed? Do you think he's wrong here? What do you kind of think about his comments?
Hard to disagree with the Hall of Fame safety, but I don't know if he's very accurate with this one. Maybe it's his past life with the other quarterbacks. Josh Allen's a tough son of a gun. He was going to get hit and still make some plays. I think if I look at his grade this season, he's done very well against the blitz. In fact, he's done poor against people who play zone and play back a little bit. He still has success in that regard, but he's much more potent against the blitz, similar to Lamar Jackson. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Josh Allen's shaky when it comes to getting hit multiple times. He's a big guy. He's going to get used to getting hit. He's the guy that's going to truck a linebacker if given an opportunity. So I'm not going to put too much stock in him being inaccurate with the football or shaky with the football when he gets hit a couple of times.
I think to me, the big thing is just to pressure him. I think that's the big point where, like, yes, if you blitz Josh Allen play after play, that's not a great strategy. Josh will be able to beat that. But I think generating pressure with 4 or 5, especially, Sam, like you mentioned, if the Ravens do play a bunch of zone and they want to confuse Josh Allen or force him into a turnover-worthy play or two, if you generate quick wins on what is a very good Buffalo offensive line, by the way, the Bills have some dudes up front, and this is going to be, I think, strength on strength. The thing that I kind of take away from Ed Reed's message, again, the fact that it's bulletin board material, like, I guess if you want to say bulletin board material, this is that. Like, I don't blame if the Bills take it as that, if Bills fans take it as that. I don't blame them for feeling that way, because let's be honest, Sam, if that was said about Lamar Jackson, we would certainly be using it as bulletin board material here in Baltimore. But I think it's about pressuring Josh and making him speed up that internal clock. And that's honestly the same thing with Lamar. Now, both these guys are low mistake quarterbacks this season. Lamar, 4 interceptions, Josh Allen, 6. They've been better in that regard, both of them. But if you can get quick wins on the defensive line and still have guys back in coverage to, I think, ease up on what that pass rush has to do, that could be a big key for the Ravens in this game.
Oh yeah, and that is huge, and that's something that they've done very well all season long. It's something that a lot of teams have tried to duplicate, including the Buffalo Bills, to only rush 4 guys and have that pass rushing ability to still have success and get into the quarterback and have that coverage in the back end. It's something that they've had very much success with, especially after that Bengals game. So I'm very intrigued to see if the Ravens are able to get that same pressure with an offensive line that you mentioned is very, very good at protecting their quarterback. So very interested to see how this goes, but you're right. If the Ravens can get those one-on-one wins against that big offensive front of Buffalo, it's going to be a big game for them.
Yeah, and I think for the Ravens, them being able to stop the Bills on early downs, force the Bills into second and long, third and long, that's going to be really, really big. But I remember, Sam, that Travis Jones hit on Josh Allen. When Ed Reed's talking about make him get up, get hit a couple of times, and prove that he can complete those passes after getting hit. Didn't Josh say that was the hardest hit he's ever taken in his career? Like that. And look, it looked that way. It was a devastating hit by Travis Jones. I'm sure Josh probably remembers that. If it's the hardest hit you've taken in the league, I'm sure you're going to. So I don't know if that's, in the back of his head of like, I need to be aware of what these guys are about to do, or if it's going to be maybe a detriment to him of getting in his own head about that. I don't think Josh is that type of quarterback, nor do I think that about Lamar. I think both these guys are pretty calm, cool, and collected. But this could just be the first to blink, first team to make the other quarterback get in his own head. We've seen the Ravens and Bills lose games that way, and obviously it's not all pinned on them. But if Lamar and Josh aren't locked in on their games, it could make a long day for their team.
Well, it sounds like Lamar Jackson's locked in. So hopefully it's not the Baltimore Ravens side of things. But you're right. First quarterback to blink could be the difference in this game. And the Ravens pretty much have a propensity of making their opposing quarterbacks blink. Lamar Jackson may be in a situation where he's down by a score or so, and he needs to be the guy to kind of uplift this team and get them back into the game. So we'll see if that transpires, how he reacts. But again, the first quarterback to blink, the first quarterback to make a mistake is the one that's probably going to cost his team the ball game. So definitely important for both quarterbacks for their respective teams' hopes of moving on to the AFC Championship game to stay consistent, stay locked in, and stay mistake-free.
And speaking of the AFC Championship game, not to look too far ahead for either side of the bracket, obviously the Chiefs will have to take care of business against the Texans, but former Raven Marcus Spears ended up on the Rich Eisen show, and he was talking about the remaining team in the playoffs to beat. Which of the remaining teams in the playoffs is that one? And he said it was the Ravens, but in his answer, he provided a little bit of a controversial statement, I guess, to some, maybe not to all, that says, I think Patrick Mahomes is the best QB in the NFL. I think Lamar Jackson is the best football player in the NFL. There's a difference in that, even though Lamar plays the position at a very high level. Do you agree with this, Sam? In my opinion, Lamar, if you're talking accolades, obviously Mahomes has those accolades. I'm not disputing that. Mahomes has had an incredible career, and he has been the best quarterback in the league for a really long time. I'm not trying to discredit what Patrick Mahomes has done over the course of his career, but I think this season, Lamar Jackson has been the best quarterback and the best player in football. I think that if we're talking career-wise, Mahomes had that string forever of being the best quarterback. But this season, I don't really think it's that much of a debate.
It's not a debate. And Lamar won first team All-Pro for the NFLPA and AP. So media and players alike understand that Lamar is the best quarterback in the league. And that is such, I get where he's coming from. That's not a knock on what Marcus said, because obviously the accolades speak for themselves when it comes to Patrick Mahomes and the 3 Super Bowl wins, 2 MVPs, fighting for another chance at another Super Bowl. So what Patrick Mahomes done has been very impressive. But if you silo it to a single season and maybe even 2 or 3 seasons if you really want to go that far. No one's played the position better than Lamar Jackson, and we'll see if the Ravens are going to make it to the AFC Championship game. Which of those 2 quarterbacks will shine? That's assuming the Chiefs do take care of business against the Texans and the Ravens do so against the Bills. But yeah, right now, no question, Lamar's the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, and I think Josh is number 2, right behind him this season, and that's why I think this matchup is such a good one in so many different ways. It's why over on FanDuel, the Bills were favored at first, and now that has flipped over to the Ravens side of things. This could be truly a toss-up, but Sam, I know you don't see it that much of a toss-up as maybe compared to the national scale. So you want to stay tuned for what's coming up, because in the final part of the show, Sam and I will preview that Ravens and Bills game. But coming up in the second part, the media, these narratives about Lamar Jackson heading into the divisional round, obviously there are plenty of them. We'll talk about what Mike Florio had to say, more Emmanuel Acho, and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is a place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. For PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly. PrizePicks has got you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear people are loving this platform. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm having a blast this week. I'm on Lamar Jackson for the 230 passing yards and Derrick Henry for more than 1 touchdown. It's so easy to use, and I love how fast the payouts are. I've gotten paid out in as little as 15 minutes when my picks hit. Plus, with weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, discounts add even more value to my lineups. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 into the after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 into the after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. We're back with our second segment, Locked On Ravens with Sam Njoku. I am Kevin Ostreicher. Ravens and Bills facing off 6:30 p.m. on Sunday. Primetime action. The Bills have not lost at home, and the Ravens love playing in primetime. So something has to give. One of these 2 teams is going home. One of these 2 teams is advancing. And I want to start here, Sam, before we get into some of the other narratives about Lamar and the postseason and everything that entails. There's been a lot of conversation about which team this game means more for, which quarterback this game means more for. And I think it's an interesting conversation because both teams actually are kind of linked in some ways, shapes, and forms, where Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have only been to one AFC championship game each. They both have not been able to get over that Kansas City hump. I know that we talked about it last week when I had that spicy question at the end of the show. John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott, there are portions of both fan bases that if they were to lose this game would be calling for their coach to be fired. I think that this is a want to grow and get to the next step. One of these teams isn't going to make it there. So in your opinion, based off of everything these 2 teams have gone through, do you think this is a more important game for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens or for Josh Allen and the Bills?
I mean, both narratives entering in this game is very important for the legacy of both of these quarterbacks. So I definitely see the strength of opinion for both sides. But in my opinion, Lamar Jackson's playing with the better football team. Right now, he's considered the favorite to go into Buffalo, something that's never happened before, and at least not in quite some time. I think the pressure is on Lamar Jackson and this Baltimore Ravens team to go into Buffalo and win. That's a tall task. I mean, that's very difficult to do. And then to go ahead and face the Kansas City Chiefs potentially in Arrowhead for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. Very daunting task, very much more so than last season even. So I think the pressure is still on Lamar Jackson to get over this Kansas City Chiefs hurdle. Same thing with Buffalo. Buffalo, with 13 seconds left, had the lead and a chance to go and fight for that championship, but they were unable to overcome the Patrick Mahomes Andy Reid combo, and they fell just a bit short. So I know both teams want a chance to go back and right that wrong. I still think the Ravens have the better shot to do it. So in my opinion, that gives him the most pressure, the most to lose, and the most chance for a narrative to swing negatively in their direction.
Yeah, and I think for both quarterbacks, if you just want to talk about it from that perspective, whichever one of these quarterbacks loses, the narrative is going to be they're a playoff joker. And I don't think that's necessarily fair to either one of those guys, but that's just how the media works, unfortunately. And there are going to be narratives and ugly narratives that form for both. But I know with Lamar, Sam, it's like those narratives are already being formed regardless of if he wins or loses. And I know that for, example, Mike Florio has been on the Lamar hate train for a little while now, the Ravens hate train for a little while now, and he's just given up apparently on Lamar Jackson, not necessarily on the football field, but he was talking about how he just thinks he and Lamar are never going to form a friendship, and said, I don't hold out any hope of having a friendship with Lamar Jackson. I think he's already decided who I am and what I am after last year. I am a man who sells flowers, Mr. Mike Florist himself. So Chris Sims was kind of like, no, man, no. And I'm just like, he's been disrespecting Lamar for all these years. Lamar has clearly noticed, like, yes, you reap what you sow. If this is the way you talk about Lamar, and he's like, oh, I voted for Lamar for MVP, that doesn't matter. Like, it's Lamar, I think he places such an emphasis on how you treat people and who you are as a person. And Mike Florio has not treated Lamar with respect. It just goes to show, I think, how toxic the conversation around Lamar actually is, even when he's playing well like he has in the playoffs so far this year.
Yeah, I think it's kind of ridiculous. I don't know why Mike wants to be friends with him in the first place. I mean, you're a media member. It's your job to criticize people, and you're not going to be on everybody's good side with it. Of course, I believe that the narrative and the toxicity handed towards Lamar Jackson is a little bit overboard. I think it's been a little bit too much of that with Acho and Nick Wright, even though he's a Chiefs fan, so give him a little bit of slack because, of course, he's going to account for his Chiefs, and then Mike Florio in that instance. So, you know, you can't expect to talk down on these people and expect to just be friends with them. So I don't really understand the notion of having him get that type of treatment from Lamar Jackson in the positive light. You talk crap about him, so I mean, of course he's not going to be your friend. So that's all there is to that. But again, I think the narrative around Lamar Jackson and his postseason choking or success or whatever, right now he's 3-4 in the playoffs. That's pretty darn close to 500. And having to go against Kansas City every year, having to go against Buffalo, having to go against Derrick Henry in those losses in the past, it's no easy task. And if the Buffalo Bills happen to lose to the Ravens, the Bills should have no shame in that because you're going up against the MVP of the league and the most talented roster in all football. So a lot of people like to make too much of losing in the playoffs. There can only be one, Highlander style. So you got to take the limps and take the losses and the wins as they come. So not too concerned with Lamar choking or having success in the playoffs. I think he's going to do great in this postseason run. But to Mike Florio's point, he's not going to be your friend, man. And it's because you talk crap. You got to live with that.
He is the man who sells flowers. And yeah, put Lamar in the NFC and see what happens. I agree with you. Where it's like this AFC conference, it's a gauntlet. Like, it is a gauntlet. I know that it's more top heavy, I feel like, with obviously Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, and then kind of falls off after that, especially this season. And speaking of friends, I think Lamar might have a couple of new friends in Chris Broussard and Kevin Wildes over there on Fox with what I don't know if you saw, but they brought out Snoop from The Wire, and Nick Wright obviously was one of Lamar's biggest haters. Snoop had some words for Nick Wright, went up there, started stroking the hair and saying, how's your hair look? Nick's, how my hair look? And if you've seen the show, obviously you know what that's in reference to. But Chris Broussard has been a Lamar guy. I'm really cool. It's really cool to see him kind of take on that role of being one of Lamar's biggest supporters. And so if you ride with Lamar, you ride with him. If you don't, talk about being his friend or anything. I don't really know why they would want to be friends anyway, but here we are. And speaking of friends, Lamar Jackson made it very clear that he and Josh Allen are not going to do any hanging out, or, you know, they're not going to have a drink before the game on Sunday. He says he doesn't really hang out with other quarterbacks, not just Josh Allen, but other quarterbacks in the offseason, saying there's no problem, but it's like we're competing against each other. I'm trying to beat you, not trying to be your friend. When we're older, we'll probably laugh about it, but right now it's serious. He's respectful towards his peers. Obviously, he has a lot of respect towards them, but when it's go time, it's go time. He doesn't care who you are.
Yeah, there's a reason why that man wears number 8. I mean, he has Kobe vibes, Mamba vibes for sure. I mean, he is locked in. He doesn't want to make friends, especially in the postseason right now. Everybody who's not wearing your color is an enemy. He is locked in. So I know a lot of fan bases want to use it as bulletin board material or feel some type of way about it. But hey, it's Baltimore against the world. It's Baltimore versus everybody. And until he hoists that Lombardi trophy in February, everybody is an op. I just like the way his mentality is for this. I like the way he's thinking about it. And listen, Josh Allen and Lamar have great respect for each other. They've spoken highly of each other in the past, but it's the playoffs. I mean, it's win or go home. There's no week 4 loss and then, okay, let's try and get better in week 5. Nope. If you don't win this game, you're clearing out your locker on Monday. So Lamar understands what the narrative will be if he loses. He understands what it would mean for his legacy. He understands what it means for the team in their attempts to get that third Lombardi trophy. So he's not going to make friends. He's trying to make enemies. He's trying to make an example out of everybody who's in his way. These are not friends. These are just simply obstacles, and hopefully the Ravens get it done.
Speaking of Kobe, Ed Oliver said that his coaches and coach compared Lamar to Kobe Bryant, saying Kobe's going to get his at some point. Lamar's going to get his at some point. We know that. We just have to limit him, but he's going to get his. And that's not necessarily both quarterbacks. Both Lamar and Josh Allen will have their plays. That's what happened in week 4. Josh had a couple of really spectacular plays. Lamar and the Ravens just had a lot more, and that's why they were able to win in week 4. But some of the other, I guess, conversation points or narratives surrounding Lamar Jackson seems like some only really apply to Lamar as opposed to Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, etc. And so Manuel Acho, who I know has kind of been on the Josh Allen MVP train, talked about how for Lamar Jackson, his season is a waste if he loses to the Bills, which again, in terms of failure, I don't necessarily disagree with that. Like, it would be a waste of a season for the Ravens from a goal perspective if their season was to be cut short in the divisional round. But it just feels like we never hear this with Allen or Burrow or, I think Mahomes obviously is a different conversation because of the accolades. He's been there. He's won Super Bowls. That's not like a huge deal or anything. But for all of these other quarterbacks, do you think that it's fair that these conversations aren't being had about other quarterbacks, Sam, and it's only Lamar Jackson? Or do you think that Lamar is better than these guys, which means he is going to be put in these higher conversations because he is better than Allen, Burrow, and Mahomes, which obviously is going to mean that he's going to be in tougher conversations?
I mean, I would agree with that if that was what they were saying. I mean, is Lamar better than those guys? If you ask Acho, I don't know if he'd say yes. I mean, that's the problem with that. So yeah. I do think that if the Ravens don't win, it's a waste of a season. But I also agree that with the Buffalo Bills. I agree that with Patrick Mahomes over there. I agree that with the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles. But there's a reason why this is a tightly contested matchup, because there are two very good quarterbacks going up against each other. If you predicted the Ravens are going to win by 20 points, then I could see this being a one-sided affair, and you're looking at Lamar to not fumble the bag. But this is going to be a tightly contested game, at least according to media and analysts out there. So I don't understand why you put this on Lamar's shoulders and not Josh Allen and not Patrick Mahomes, who's the number 1 seed in the AFC. So I don't agree with the notion that it's all on Lamar, and if Lamar doesn't get it done, then he's the only quarterback who's really suffering, and he's the only one that's going to have a wasted season. There are a lot of teams who are looking for a championship that would have wasted an opportunity if they don't get it done. Lamar happens to be one of them. There's definitely 3 or 4 more guys to fit in that category.
Yeah, and I'm sure, Lamar will be the first to tell you that, if he loses to Buffalo and then if he goes on to win the MVP, as has happened before, he's going to say in his speech like he has before, like, he wishes he would at the season, all due respect, like, obviously it's a great honor and everything, but, he wishes he was at the Super Bowl. And, like, that to him would be a waste of a season. But I agree with you where it's like these other quarterbacks also need to be in those conversations as well. And I do think Lamar is better than those guys, but it's not like this monumental, like Lamar Jackson to Josh Rosen difference where you're not going to put them in those conversations. These are all elite quarterbacks. There's obviously a ranking of who's better than who, but the only one, and the reason I said Mahomes is in a different stratosphere is just because of he's won Super Bowls. So this season, yes, obviously it'll be a waste if they lose to the Texans in the divisional round, but we're not talking about Mahomes having no Super Bowls, and I think that's why we don't hear him in these conversations. But for the other quarterbacks, Joe Burrow's made 1 Super Bowl. Lamar and Josh Allen have not made it, and they've only made 1 AFC championship game. These quarterbacks are more tightly related than I think some of the media gives them credit for, and it seems like Lamar is at the forefront of all those conversations for multiple different reasons. But coming up, we have a game to play on Sunday, and I've been teasing it all show. Sam likes this matchup for the Ravens. We'll explain why and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by TurboTax, and this is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes were waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku rocking out on this Pro Bowl Friday, just a couple days before the Ravens face off against the Bills in the divisional round. And Sam, I just want to start off with your overall thoughts on the matchup, especially based off of what you saw in the Steelers game, maybe trends you can take away from that game in particular, because obviously each game is different. You don't want to know every single week. It's a reset. It's not as free-flowing as the regular season. But I do think we saw some things against the Steelers that Baltimore can take into this matchup against the Bills.
I did not expect the Ravens to have that kind of success running the football against a Pittsburgh Steelers team that is very good at playing this Ravens offense and very good at stopping the run in general. I knew their motions and misdirections were going to be very vital to the Ravens' success, but I didn't think they would have that kind of success. And having that success against the Steelers team that is really built to stop Lamar Jackson and his Ravens team gives me confidence heading into a matchup with the Bills, where their defense is not designed to stop this Ravens team. Not at all. They're designed to stop the Kansas City Chiefs, to stop the Miami Dolphins. They're built to stop huge chunk plays in the passing game, give them some versatility with their looks. But for the most part, this is a very bad matchup for the Buffalo Bills. And I know week 4 had it where there was a few starters missing for the Buffalo Bills, but the philosophy of the Bills has remained the same throughout the season. They will need to change that philosophy a great deal in this upcoming matchup if they are to have any chance of slowing down Derrick Henry.
I want to dive more into that philosophy because obviously it's been outlined by many different people that the Bills have a lighter defense, particularly on the defensive line. They like to play in nickel packages and base and whatnot. They're going to have to get uncomfortable if they want to have any shot at winning this game. And you and I have talked about this before, Sam, but it's kind of hard to have that short of a turnaround and kind of try to instill a new way of playing defense, especially when you've played the same type of defense all season. And the Bills at times, in fact, a lot of the time have been stubborn about straying away from that level of philosophy that they play on defense. So, I mean, do you think it's even possible for them to, even if they want to incorporate a new game plan, get it all down by the time Sunday rolls around? Because that is a very short turnaround if you're going to try to do something you really haven't done all season.
Stranger things have happened. I mean, I guess there's a shot. I think if Sean McDermott knew that if they won that game against the Broncos, that they were definitely going to face the Ravens. Maybe they've been trying to implement slowly different things as the weeks have progressed, but man, it's going to be difficult. The Bills do not blitz the football a lot. They do not blitz to go after the quarterback very much. I think they're 4th least in the league when it comes in terms of blitzing the opposing quarterback. So, and you need to blitz a little bit to stop the run as well. So just not having that familiarity with going after the running back, being patient to see where the football is going in those read option situations, it's going to be tough, man. I don't know if the Bills are going to try and play more of a 4-3 look. I talked to a couple of Bills fans who say that the Bills have been implementing more of a 4-3 look in certain situations recently. Maybe they do that predominantly in this game. But even if they do that, they're matching up problems with the passing attack with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. That will be huge for them going into that game. So even if they run that 4-3, it may not mean much. It'll give them a better shot, but it does put them at a disadvantage in the passing game, and that's why Sean McDermott loves to run that nickel situation so much.
Now, I know you've seen the film from both games, Ravens and Bills, and I know that one of the big storylines from that Pittsburgh game was the Ravens using Josh Jones as much as they did with extra offensive line and just being mega big, getting the big boy packages out there. And I think that that is one of the things that they can, again, do against Buffalo to try to out-physical them. Do you think that we're going to see as much of that in this game? Do you think this is the matchup to try to just go all in on it and say, hey, we're going to do this and run this at you, and if you can't stop it, we're just going to go right to the well every single time like Pittsburgh?
I think they're going to do that early. I think they're going to test the Bills. How stubborn are you? You mentioned them being stubborn. How stubborn are you willing to be? Are you willing to keep 7 DBs out there against 7 monstrous humans out there with Patrick Ricard even considered, in my opinion, to be another offensive lineman? Yeah. How are you going to stop this big offensive front with those small guys out there? I think it's a big question going into it. I think the Ravens take that approach, especially with the weather concerns, being a little chilly, maybe some wind, maybe some flurries out there to give Lamar Jackson maybe a little hesitant to throw the football early. Go big up front. Run the football down their throat. Dare them to stop it. They're going to have to stop it, and the only way to do it is to get heavy. When they do that, there's opportunities for success in the play-action attack. So I think to your point, yeah, Josh Jones may have a big game here because he's going to be called on early to really set the tone with this running game.
And this is why you got Derrick Henry, isn't it? Literally in these cold weather January games when defenses are worn down from the season, and as the game goes on and it gets colder out, almost reminds me, Sam, of Brandon Jacobs back in the day with the Giants, just this like big bruising running back. And I remember hearing multiple players back then say, man, it gets to December, you don't want to tackle Brandon Jacobs. And look, Derrick Henry's the same thing. It's like this big hulking running back that can just out physical you. And it's like a wrecking ball, right? The more momentum you allow that wrecking ball to get, the more dangerous he is. And I think that's one of the common misconceptions about Derrick Henry is like, oh, he's big, so he's not fast. Derrick Henry is very fast. He is incredibly fast. He's hit 21, 22, 23 miles an hour on multiple carries this season. You let him get going, and if the Bills' defensive line can't win up front early in plays, he's going to get to the second level, in which each level he gets to, it's going to be more dangerous. And so we saw the Steelers try to sell out to stop Derrick Henry early. Lamar Jackson obviously took those balls, and then the Steelers had to adjust. And the Ravens said, okay, Derrick, now it's your time. Go out there and be the closer. And so I think for Buffalo, it's about discipline. Von Miller talked about even rushing Lamar Jackson in the passing game and saying that, you can't cage rush him the whole time because that's not an effective way of stopping him, because that's not the way to stop him. Like, it feels like, Sam, if the Ravens play their game, they're unbeatable. The issue is that they can beat themselves, and they're their biggest opponent. If they can avoid all that, if they can avoid mistakes, penalties, turnovers, whatever it may be, I don't know if there's a team that can beat Baltimore.
I agree with you. And, that's going to be the thing. Can the Bills do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen? I think another interesting aspect of this game is Josh Allen versus this Ravens defense. It has gotten better in recent weeks, but they did give up a couple of scores to Pittsburgh in I would say garbage time, pretty much. But there is some opportunities potentially for Josh Allen to keep this game going. Josh Allen is going to have to put on the Superman cape in this one. There's no doubt about it. Whatever the game plan is for the Bills offense, it has to be to put points on the board early and often to really take away the effect of the running game, because you saw it in Pittsburgh, in that Pittsburgh game, I was just saying, in Baltimore, when Lamar and this Ravens team got off to a 14-point lead, there was no stopping them. They just kept running the football over and over again, taking away possessions from the Pittsburgh Steelers, long play drives, 13 play drives, 14 play drives, taking the air off the ball, taking the time off the clock. The Bills cannot afford to let that happen. So a lot of this is going to be on the shoulders of Josh Allen. You think he's MVP? He has to go out there and prove it, because if they don't get things going on the offensive side of the ball with the Buffalo Bills, this could get ugly.
Don't you love when a show comes full circle? You say, Josh Allen, go out there and prove it. And then Ed Reed's out here saying, Josh Allen, show me you can complete the ball after getting hit all day. This is about proving things for both these quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. So let's talk about it, Sam. You love this matchup for the Ravens. This seems like a game that if everything goes right for them, they should be able to win pretty handily. FanDuel has this as a very tightly contested game. Again, the Bills were favored. Now the Ravens are favored. Do you think it's a tight game, or do you think that the Ravens win this one by more than a lot of people think?
If this was in Baltimore, I'd say the Ravens run away with it. I don't know what's going on in Vegas. I don't know if they're just very much, using the Broncos game as a litmus for how this Bills team can perform. But the matchups are not good, guys. I'm telling you, at least on the defensive side of the ball for the Bills, with this Ravens offensive attack. And we've seen it time and time again throughout the season. If you can't stop Derrick Henry, you can't beat Baltimore. If Derrick Henry runs for 90 yards, this team is undefeated. I fully expect Derrick Henry to run for 90 yards on this team, unless the Bills go out of their way to stop the run by selling it. And then the ball goes into Lamar Jackson's hands, either bootlegging, pivoting outside and getting runs that way, or throwing the ball down the field to his tight ends and Rashad Bateman. So I don't know. I think this game is going to be a lot less competitive than people make it out to be. It is in Buffalo, so I'll give them a shot, but I still think the Ravens win comfortably. I say 31-21.
Yeah, I think the Ravens win by 6. I say 29-23. Again, I don't think it's going to be, and obviously right now on FanDuel, the Ravens are favored by 1.5 points. I think that, the Ravens win by more than that. I just think it's a good matchup for the Ravens, and sometimes that's all it is, Sam. If you're Buffalo or any team, just run into a bad matchup. It's not that Buffalo's a bad team. There's no shame in losing to the Ravens, and for the Ravens, I don't think there'd be any shame in losing to Buffalo. They're two really good teams, but I just think that Baltimore has the matchup advantage, and that that it's really loud, I think, in this game between the Ravens and the Bills. So we'll see how it all unfolds. Obviously, cold weather games, Sunday night football, and hopefully, Sam, I'll say it like I did last week. Hopefully, we're talking again next week after a big Ravens victory and AFC Championship, whether that is the Chiefs or the Texans. I appreciate you hopping on. Tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you for having me again. You can find my stuff on YouTube at Ravens Talk Podcast. An episode just dropped this morning talking all about that Ravens-Bills matchup. You can also find me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Our podcasts are on there all the time, and it's available almost immediately. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter X at Ravens Talk Podcast, always talking to the fans about the game, matchups, and things of that nature.
Sam does a lot of great work, and he works hard. So be sure to support him. The links in the description down below to all that Sam does. Sam, I appreciate you as always. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today, watched, listened to Locked On Ravens. On the way out, hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form. We'll be back here tomorrow with a bonus episode because we have to have bonus episodes during the playoffs. It's the playoffs. So we'll be back here 6 a.m. talking more Ravens football. So be sure to stay tuned. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.